Hi, everyone. This is Caroline Griffin. I am the Event and Operations Manager for Riot. Thank you all for joining us today. I'm super excited to have Tim Rosenberg here with us. Tim is the Director for Lithios. Lithios has been a sponsor of Riot for over 2 years now. We're super excited to have them in our ecosystem. Just a couple of ground rules before we get started. All of you are muted. If you do have any questions, please put those in the Q&A or chat box, and we will make sure all of your questions get answered at the end of the presentation. This presentation is being recorded, so it will be released later on Riot's YouTube channel and then posted to Meetup. Without further ado, I will give it to Tim.
Hi, so excited to be speaking with everyone. Today I want to talk about how software is being used to track infectious diseases. Given the current climate of the world, we're entering a new area where we've never really been in this situation before in this way with the technology that we have. To start off with some background information, my name's Tim Rosenberg. I'm the director at Lithios, and joining me on the webinar is the rest of our team as well. What we do mobile app development, app design, web development, and consulting. We've worked with Riot in the HQ community for an extensive amount of time, and we love, kind of contributing back to the community. Some projects that we've done in the past, in particular, we've worked on the CoWorks application, which is what has powered HQ. We've also worked with some additional clients as well, such as Intel, DraftKings, and Bayer. So really excited to speaking today and really love sharing how technology is helping the world. So the biggest question that is on everyone's mind is how will we safely return to normal? With social distancing in place, with restaurants and stores closing, some states are transitioning into partial reopening and taking a phased approach. There's going to be some challenges, and if we don't do this carefully, we may see an additional spike. We want to make sure that we flatten the curve that health professionals have been talking about. So rather than seeing a huge increase as soon as contact is increased, we want to see if we can slow it down as much as possible. In the past, this has happened before in a similar way. So about 100 years ago or so, the Spanish flu had a significant impact. And once people were starting to go back to normal and they felt safe, one thing that happened is that they experienced a second outbreak because people let their guard down, people were less cautious, and infections sharply increased. So some of the challenges back then was that there wasn't as much medical knowledge, social distancing wasn't practiced, sanitation standards weren't established, and there was limited technology to get the word out and inform people accurately. And so if we fast forward to today, how are we facing these challenges today? So today we have several modern advances. We've got more advanced medical knowledge. We have the communication infrastructure to deploy out public safety messages. Every major tech company from YouTube, Pinterest, Facebook, Google, Apple have made a concerted effort to publish official information and announcement so that the word can get across much faster than before. So our communication infrastructure has significantly become more connected. We now have the ability with more advanced technology, and today I want to talk about how the Internet of Things is having a significant impact. So now we can use connected devices to trace the exposure of COVID-19. But with modern advances, we also have a lot of modern concerns. Privacy is becoming a more pressing issue, and it has never reached this level of concern as before because now digital devices can creep into every aspect of your life. We're facing a challenge with modern politics, when addressing these new technology challenges. And we also want to make sure that the correct medically accurate messages get across and that we don't spread any misinformation. Security and the HIPAA compliance of sharing information around medical information is highly important. And a challenge is making sure that we have technology and information that's universally accessible so that everyone who has come into contact with COVID-19 is able to get notified in a fast and efficient manner. So I want to talk a little bit about how software is making an impact. I'm going to go over a couple of projects and products that are out in the world that are making a difference. So one example is Postman. So Postman has released a COVID-19 API. This API will give the ability to track a centralized database of cases, of what states and what countries have received the like what number of infections each state and each country has seen an increase. It also shows like how many deaths, how many infections compared across globally. So this API is being used by software developers to incorporate dashboards and information to inform the public. HP has released open source 3D printing. So for essential workers who are on the front line in the medical field, HP has released blueprints for these essential workers to print out equipment for their personal protection. And one technology that's interesting is that there's now a new growth in occupancy sensors. So with stores phasing into a reopening, these sensors are using motion detection to detect how many individuals are coming into the store, how many are going out, and it's using artificial intelligence to detect what direction people are moving and whether it should count it as entering, browsing, or leaving. So this is essential for making sure that grocery stores and restaurants are safe at a reduced occupancy level without having the overhead of having to manually count each person. Another project is called Project N95. This is a marketplace where individuals who want to sell personal protection equipment and also those who want to buy can join this platform and exchange those that need and those that have to match supply with demand. And the big topic I want to talk about is how is IoT specifically making an impact? Google and Apple are in collaboration on something called an exposure API. Although Google and Apple have been rivals and competitors, this unlikely collaboration is very important for the world and is going to make a very significant impact. So here's kind of an overview of what Google and Apple are working on. So the exposure API is going to be used to track the exposure of COVID-19 through your Bluetooth device. Your phone will be able to detect if you've come into contact with another person who has been infected with COVID-19. And here's a scenario to explain how it will work. So let's imagine that this is Sally. She downloads an app that is provided by a public health official entity. So this organization releases an official app, and this application will use the exposure API provided by Apple and Google. And what this app does is that it emits a Bluetooth signal to indicate how much contact you're having with other devices. It is intended to be very private and anonymous. So rather than emitting your personal information, it only emits a private identifier key. So this random number, for example, this number will change every 10 to 20 minutes to keep it secure and anonymous. So every 10 or 20 minutes, you'll get a new number that gets admitted, and other devices that are also tracking exposure, when they come into contact you, they'll pair your identification number with their device. It also doesn't store any location. So what's significant about Bluetooth, it adds a layer of privacy so that it can only measure the proximity of two devices and how much social distancing is happening. It doesn't actually measure the location to keep your information private. So let's say that Sally meets Joe. Sally has an iPhone, but Joe has an Android. They don't really know each other. They're not in each other's contacts, and they're not using the same public health app, but they're both using one that's provided by the API. So when they come into contact, both of their devices will emit a Bluetooth signal, sharing their anonymous identification key. These numbers will pair together in a log. So Sally will get a full log of, what are the randomized numbers of people that I've been in contact with. And the Bluetooth signal can communicate duration. So how long were Sally and Joe sitting together? And based on the signal strength, it can detect how close were they? Were they practicing social distancing? So later, let's say that Joe has a different public health app, but it still uses the same API. He's on an Android device. He goes to the doctor, he's not feeling well, and finds out that he's contracted COVID-19. He can go into the app and indicate his condition. This is opt-in only. So he chooses to share this information privately. The app doesn't collect it without his consent. And the application will then backtrace and identify who he's come in contact with for the past 14 days. After the 14-day period, his identification keys will expire and disappear. Now, when he shares his update, Sally's log of identifiable individuals, or sorry, Sarah's log of ID numbers will get updated. So her database of contacts will update, and so now there's a alert that says, okay, this random individual, you had spent 94 minutes and you're 3 feet away based on the Bluetooth strength. It'll get updated in a database and notify Sally's device. So Sally will get a push notification. The public health app will let her know, hey, you've come in contact with someone who has tested positive for COVID-19. And this information is fully anonymous. Sally doesn't know who the individual was, and Joe's information is protected. So that is kind of an overview of how the API would work from end to end. In this scenario, Sally can then see a healthcare professional and be better informed to self-isolate for 14 days until her symptoms subside. The API is currently out for developers, so beta releases have been deployed, and developers have gotten access to start building these public safety applications. And I believe a public-facing version is coming out soon, if not already, so that this will be ready for production. What's incredible is that because Google and Apple are both collaborating on this, you're not reliant on only an Apple device to Apple device contact tracing. This would be like universal for those that opt in. Now, with this new technology comes a lot of concerns. So the most important would be privacy. The application doesn't store any information or personally identifiable information about you on the application itself. And Google and Apple do not store any of your information. It stays within your local device. So that way your information is more secure. This contact trace feature must be opt-in. So once these versions come out, you'll have to manually opt in into your settings app. So on the left is what the settings will look like on Android. On the right is what it will look like for iPhone, and it will only trace contacts if you opt in. And it won't track your location, and the ability to track location won't exist unless you have a public health app installed. Some additional safeguards is that this can only be used by public health entities. So public health organization, public safety organizations and authorities, they're the only ones who have access to publishing these applications on the Apple App Store and the Google Play Store. And when they publish it, it must follow very strict privacy requirements, or else Apple will not allow them. Google and Apple will not allow them to be published. Another concern is that contact tracing can only work if there's enough people being traced. So because Google and Apple are collaborating efforts, it's more universally accessible, so that regardless of what device you have, you can participate in this contact tracing network if needed. So that's kind of a quick overview of how software and IoT is making a difference and an impact with the effort to trace COVID-19 exposure. So I'll go ahead and open this up to Q&A if there's any questions about the exposure API or software in general. Caroline, do you want to, let's see, would you like to moderate the questions, or would you like me to browse the chat to see what's come up?
I'm happy to read through the questions.
Okay, awesome.
All right. So there's quite a few comments. Let me just find a good starting point. Let's see. Okay. Is there an API that would allow linkage between location and nearby testing sites?
That would be separate. For that would just be location itself. I believe that some health organizations have released an API that shows like a list of location sites. So as long as there's a way to see a list of testing centers, a user could share their location and then find the nearest testing center that they can access. That would be separate from contact tracing. So the way that would be treated would be like would have to be completely separate from contact tracing. So with contact tracing, the app would not be allowed to collect their location, but then if they're sharing their location to find the nearest testing center, the location can only be tracked while they are searching for nearby testing centers. So the answer would be yes, but it would have to be treated separately in order to meet these privacy requirements. Great question.
Thanks, Tim. Let's see. Is the random nonce a time-based one-time password algorithm an extension of the HMAC-based one-time password algorithm?
That's a great question. I'm not sure exactly what that is referring to, but the way that the ID numbers are generated, these are one-time random random strings. So they will expire after about 14 days, And so there will be a private key that would identify you, and then there would be like a public random string that goes out to another person. So you'll have one identifier that ties it to you, but then you'll have several random identifiers that would go out into the ether and connect with other devices. I believe that is my understanding of how this API is to work.
Great, Tim. Next question. Can development firms build apps using the Exposure API on behalf of public health providers?
Yes. The app has to be published underneath the public health entity and their account. Google and Apple, they're going to require a significant level of verification. So the approval process is going to take much longer. And if it's published through like a developer's personal account or an agency account, it will most likely not get approved, but developers can publish on behalf of a public health official.
Thank you, Tim. Next question. Can someone run IDs through an official agency to do development debug, or how does a developer get involved with the IDs?
That's a great question. So currently the API kit has been released into beta so that developers can test with IDs. Because the IDs don't store the personal information, there's not a way to identify a person. So I do believe that Google and Apple have made it so that you can test with kind of sample data that is equivalent to production, but it would not store any personal information.
Thank you, Tim. The next one is, could you please discuss security concerns and doxing through upload of phones, BLE connections, and geolocation?
That's a great question. I'll try to address that in a general sense. So with geolocation, in order to enable the contact tracing app, it only measures Bluetooth proximity, and it can detect duration of a connection when you come in contact with someone. While your device is tracing, it's not allowed to collect your location to be paired with the tracing. And an additional security stopgap is that your data does not get uploaded. It doesn't live in a remote server. It doesn't get deployed or uploaded anywhere. It stays on your local device to keep your data secure. Now, one concern would be just like how like what happens when you get notified. So when you get notified that you've come in contact with someone, the personal information is removed. So you don't know who you came in contact with that had an infection. It just notifies you that's someone. But all the data stays localized on your device and does not get uploaded for privacy concerns.
That's good to know. Thanks, Tim. The next question is, can a developer test that two phones get IDs with the current kit?
That's a great question. I don't know the answer right now. In order to get a detailed answer, Google and Apple, they have released sample code. So Google and Apple, they've both released kind of a sample application that demos the core basic features. So if there are any more like detailed technical questions, you can download their kits and run a test app, do like a sample session, record an instance, and then see how see how like the app behaves in beta.
Thank you, Tim. Those are all the questions that I'm seeing now. We'll leave the chat box open for a little bit longer. Please, if you have questions, put them in the Q&A box or the chat box.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for joining Riot and myself. I want to give a shout out to the Lithios team. So thank you for me as well. So if anyone wants to learn more about the Exposure API, feel free to contact me. We can kind of send this presentation afterwards. If anyone's curious about maybe learning about some of the projects, you can click on the link within the PowerPoint that will be sent out. And feel free to contact us at Lithios if you ever have any mobile development questions. And I'll give this moment, Deshaun, does Deshaun want to kind of have a shout out, chat a little bit about Lithios?
Yeah, that's a great question. I do not see Deshaun on right now. Deshaun, if you are on, if you want to shoot me a note, I can make sure that you are unmuted, but I do not see him on right now.
Oh, okay.
I do just have one comment for you, Tim. Mike is saying, thanks for the presentation and the great Q&A. So
Awesome. Appreciate it, Mike.
Michael said, different Mike. Michael said, thank you for your presentation. It was very informative. So lots of positive feedback.
Awesome. So for those that are concerned, I'll just do this screen. This is going to be pretty important. If you download a public health app and you allow for the Exposure API to grant you grant access to your phone, let's say that you're testing it, trying it out. If for any reason that you no longer want to share your contact tracing information, here's a screenshot of what the settings will look like to remove it. So within the settings apps for both Android and iOS, these settings will allow you to delete the random IDs. So for the past 14 days, it will just wipe it clean, or you can also turn it off altogether. So for even the non-technical people, everyday people, make sure that you are aware about these privacy updates whenever the API gets released in public.
That's awesome. Thanks for sharing.
Alrighty, well, I guess if that's it, thank you so much, everyone, for joining me, and we look forward to seeing everyone someday once things resume back to normal, thanks to technology.
Absolutely, absolutely. Same here. We do have one more question if you wanted to stick around, or I can
Yes,
send them. Okay. The question is in regards to malicious apps sending IDs to phones. What about malicious apps sending IDs to phones and then tells the health department it's infected? Are there any guards against that, Tim?
That's an excellent question. So when you indicate that you have an infection, I, I believe you have to scan in a document that identifies that it's legitimate. So there's a screenshot showing a user scanning in like a verified note from a doctor. So there is a layer of qualification so that there isn't like an arbitrary infection reporting. You have to have it officially reported. So there is a way to kind of scan official documentation to verify that you have been officially diagnosed. It will treat kind of a official diagnosis with much more significant priority. And it can also indicate if you're just experiencing symptoms, because you may experience symptoms, but it might not be an official diagnosis. So in that case, it will tell you that you should get an official diagnosis, and once you do, you'll have to scan and upload like official documentation. But yes, that's a very good question. With some of the concerns about public safety, there's been cases where people will like cough in public as a threat. So the safeguards against any malicious attacks have been considered. So having the upload feature will kind of reduce and prevent that.
Tim, and a follow-up question to that, what if they get an infected notice for real and tie it to a fake super spreader, fake BLE device, a device that's been contacting everyone?
That is a really great question. So, I don't know if there's a way. I don't know. As of now, I don't know if there's any feature in place to prevent that. One note that I did read in the documentation is that um, I believe your contact information. This is tentative. I have to kind of verify this, but I believe that your contact information may be shared only with the public health official, so that they can contact you. So in that event, if you are a super, like, if you upload it to someone's phone who is a super spreader, but they didn't actually have it, I believe in that case, they may get contacted by a health official if it reaches a certain threshold of a threat, and then they can kind of like cross verify it. Now, what I'm am a little bit on the fence about is that from what I've been reading about the documentation, like your personal information, I've been reading a couple of documentation articles that say your personal information does not get shared. I've also read additional documentation that say that a public health official entity may reach out to contact you in the event of an emergency. So it sounds like under circumstances, your contact information may get shared. So I'm a little bit on the fence of how they'll be implemented from a privacy standpoint. But I think the important thing is that your information will never get shared with another user peer to peer. It can only get shared with a public health entity. And in the event that a false positive does get released, it would be up to the healthcare institution to kind of manage that crisis and update the information. So they would have to make that update, and then the app will kind of adjust accordingly. But that's a really great question. Hopefully, um, hopefully that doesn't happen. But in which case there is kind of a safeguard for public health to kind of verify an instance in certain circumstances.
Yeah, great questions here today. We have some more popping up, Tim. The next one is, how would the contact information integrate with any apps like Apple Health or Epic MyChart? Is there an option to share that voluntarily or at least firewall it?
So I guess I'm wondering is it sounds like the question is getting to the ability, like if you wanted to share or if you don't want to share third party information.
Yeah,
Um,
the first part was about how would the contact information integrate with the application? And then is there an option to share that?
so it's up to the public health entity if they want to build those features. Now, the most important thing is that your personal information can't be shared during contact tracing, so that another peer can't identify you personally. Um, if a public health entity wanted to have the ability for users to provide their personal information willingly, it's up to the health institution to provide that if they want that in the app. So it's up to them to decide, and the users would opt in. So they could provide that, and they would have the ability to opt out if they wanted to. So Google and Apple, they're going to be very strict around that. So if they notice that like personal contact is required, they may turn down the application from the Google Play Store and the App Store. So I believe it's up to the health organization to if they need to collect that, but it would have to be optional. And then with the other question, um, within the app, they can choose to integrate with like a third-party app or a secondary app, like the health app or other like kind of apps. Google, let's see, Google and Apple have also released. Let me see if I can pull it up. So Google and Apple released. I know that Apple has at least. They have a COVID-19 screening tool. So if is my webcam still on, or am I just screen sharing?
No, your webcam is on, Tim.
Okay. So Apple has released a screening tool. So here's kind of a quick look of what it looks like. And you can screen yourself and report any personal symptoms. And I believe when you report your symptoms, it can get logged into the health app. And so however, Google does not want to be responsible for the exposure application. So they've built the API, but it's up to health organizations to build the apps. So the Apple tool could like log your symptoms, but it would not have any contact tracing. Now separately, a contact tracing application, if it's provided by a health organization, if they wanted to, they could built in integration with like third-party apps as well. It would have to be up to the public health institution to see if they want to integrate. But yeah, so it's definitely possible. It has to be custom built in. But yeah, great question. And a couple examples to kind of see this in action. If you go on the App Store, search for Healthy Together. Here's a screenshot of Healthy Together, and we can kind of send a recap. But it provides you with the ability to check your symptoms, see if you have any issues, and this is made by a public health organization in Utah. So the question earlier about GPS location, this has a map of nearby testing sites. So if you do notice symptoms, it'll show you nearby testing site areas. So if they choose, they could integrate with some of these additional features as well. But all these concerns about privacy, the most important thing, it has to be patient permitted and a user opt-in. So when it comes to these privacy concerns, a patient may share their information if they want to, but they must actively opt in. And if a application requires that they share it, then they'll most likely get denied from the app stores. Questions?
Thanks so much, Tim. So with that, I would like to say thank you again to Tim for being here today, for the very informative presentation and the very thorough answers to all the questions. This was great. And you can find Tim's presentation as well as this recording on Riot's Meetup page. Please, if you need help connecting to Tim, please reach out to me or to Tim directly. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. And also, Carolyn.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I don't know if it got ended. I'll share a link. Let me see. Exposure API Google. There is there's an official website that has more information. Let me actually post this. I'm going to post this in the webinar chat. So this has more details on how the technology works, how the identifiers are shared. It also gives some of these disclaimers that that answers questions that a lot of people had. So let me share. I think I have to stop sharing my screen. And then I have to open up the chat. Oh, here it is. Okay. So this has a lot of very insightful information. They have like an FAQ document. They have a sample app they can download, and they have technical specifications for the more technical questions that came in. Feel free to take a look at this page, and I'll answer some of the more detailed questions that everyone had.
Perfect. Thanks so much for sharing, Tim. I'll make sure that gets on the meetup page as well.
Alrighty.
Awesome. Thank you so much, everybody. Have a great day.
All right. Have a good one.